All right, welcome everybody to our latest Live Motocross podcast as we talk all things AMA Supercross ahead of Birmingham and speak some MXGP with Jason Thomas. Obviously, firstly, thank you for everyone for listening and supporting the site. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to thank our sponsor for this one in Fly Racing. Fly Racing is aimed to provide customers with the very best in off-road performance products, led by the revolutionary Formula S Smart Helmet. Fly Racing continues to push innovation in safety to new levels. Never before has style and technology blended together so seamlessly as the 2025 Fly Racing lineup. For more info, check out flyracing.com, visit your local dealers, follow Fly Racing Global on social media, and cheer for all their athletes in the SMX and MXGP championships. All right, JT, how's life? And thanks for joining us, mate. It was definitely a wild weekend for you in Spain there.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, feeling a little jet lagged, a little tired, trying to fight off. I don't know. I don't think I'm getting sick, but I just feel like my body's really worn down at the moment. But yeah, such is life when you're going to travel all over the world in consecutive weekends for months on end. It's probably to be expected. So wouldn't trade it. Not complaining, that's for sure. But yeah, there's always a price to pay for burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, mate, it's a crazy schedule. I guess we'll start with the MXGP. The main talking point was the weather, the conditions. It was absolutely wild. Obviously, you did a great job with commentary with Paul in the booth, mate. It's always good, obviously, to get over there and meet some people. You got the Fly Racing connections now with the Dakali team. Really cool to see. They had some glimpses, some great rides here and there from their riders, the Coonan brothers, Langenfelder. So must have been awesome to catch up, do the commentary. Aside from the weather, that was the only down point, really.
Yeah, I'm first off, I'm incredibly fortunate to be able to go over there, not only on the in front side of them allowing me to be in the booth, but also, such a incredible company with Fly Racing and Western Power Sports enabling me to go. There are two sides of that coin, and both of them I owe a big thanks to making it possible. But yeah, it was the one weekend until July really that it made sense for me to go. And I think you have to qualify it as making sense because most people, when I told them that I was taking the one-off weekend of Monster Energy Supercross and flying to Spain and then jumping right back into our series, they would laugh at me saying it made sense, but just logistically possible, let's say, for me to go. And so yeah, I was excited to go from the moment I booked my travel plans. Unfortunately, weather didn't cooperate. There's really no way to get around it. It's just a brutal weekend of weather. Saturday was the best day, and it still rained some on Saturday. We had brief moments of sunshine, and realistically, the track on Saturday for the racing, for the qualifying races, wasn't terrible. It wasn't bad even. No, was it perfect? No, of course not. But it was reasonable. You could ride it and I would say even race the track where the rest of the time guys were just trying to circulate without incident. There wasn't a lot of racing going on other than Saturday afternoon for, those two qualifying races. But, such is the life of MXGP. It's motocross globally. You're going to run into inclement weather, but I think, Europe in the spring, your likelihood of running into bad weather is extremely high. So if you told me they had more weather in France this coming weekend, it wouldn't shock me in the least bit. That's those are the conditions you get in the springtime, and that could be the same for Monster Energy Supercross. We have eight races in a row upcoming, and that are all in the springtime, and they're all outside, exposed to the elements. So it's just a part of it. Unfortunately, I know for the racers, it was about the toughest conditions I've seen in a very long time. And yeah, it wasn't the most entertaining race to watch ever. The guys are more or less just in survival mode versus actually attacking the racetrack. But that you have to, I think you always have to compartmentalize it and say, well, if the weather was perfect, the same amount of points would be given out today than would be then, and the same amount of bonus money is going to be paid today as would be then. So you have to kind of approach it with the same mentality. You can't just kind of write it off because the weather's bad, especially not if you're in championship contention.
Yeah, it was definitely a tough one for all involved, and obviously the track crew had their work cut out. I'm assuming they were doing their best. It looks like they made it as good as possible, mate. But yeah, any words on that just quickly as well?
Yeah, yeah, on Saturday they did a fantastic job. Honestly, I was shocked at how good the racetrack was, and I briefly touched on it there. Sunday they were just overwhelmed. It rained a lot overnight on Saturday night, and I think more rain throughout Sunday. It just reached a point where there was nowhere left for them to push mud. The dirt had reached a saturation point where they just couldn't manage it anymore, and that's where you saw it really start to kind of come apart on them. And it's there's a limit to how much water and how much area there is. They used every tool they had. And the racetrack, to be quite honest, the racetrack was the best part of the entire facility, and rightfully so. If you're going to have one area that you give all the attention to, it should be the racetrack. And I think they really focused all their efforts there because the paddock, parking areas, I mean, everywhere else on the facility was in complete disarray. And that's fine. I'm not complaining. Whatever. I've been, wouldn't be the first time I've been muddy. That's for damn sure. So, to your point, yes, they did a great job with the racetrack. It just was kind of unfortunate for everybody else that the facility was a little worse for wear.
Yeah, well said, mate. And obviously, with the racing the way it was, and the conditions being so tough, and the long races, it gave you and Paul a good opportunity to go in depth in a lot of topics, and provided some really great insight for the fans for sure, mate. So obviously, the track, like you saw, the ruts were massive, and even when it was drying, it was getting even more difficult. So, but like the way you're going into the detail about how physically demanding it is, obviously the enduro style, the heart rate being not so high, but just the tax on the arms, the legs, the core, strength, balance, coordination had to be right up there to survive. So that was pretty cool and something a bit different to your usual Supercross where it's short, sharp delivery and execution.
It is. It's a completely different race, and we talked about it a little bit on the broadcast, but a typical race is so, you have to be strong, and there's so many muscles in play, and balance and technique and all the, high end race strategies that have to be employed. Mud racing is just, it's different. Not that all those things don't come into play. Of course, balance and coordination, all those things are at a 10 because you're trying to maneuver this motorcycle around a racetrack. But the muscle fatigue that is in play when the mud is that heavy is on a different level. And it's hard to kind of verbalize or explain the muscle burn you have during a mud race versus a normal race. It's just you're holding on with every inch of your body because the motorcycle doesn't want to do anything you want it to do. The mud is so overpowering that you're just, yeah, your muscles are just screaming at you. And anybody that's listening to this who's ever raced a mud race will know what I'm talking about. It's just a very different type of race, and the ask on your body is very different. Not, I wouldn't say any more or less because your heart rate is much lower, but your physical fatigue, like muscle wise, is going to be much higher. So it's almost like a trade off more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And obviously, the man that handled that the best was Geyser. Perfect weekend, got the 60 points. It's a good swing for him. Obviously, you guys covered on the broadcast, 50th GP win. So it was a good bounce back after not the best round in Argentina. Still a solid effort. And he was only really challenged on the Saturday by Coonan, who was coming before he crashed. But yeah, some of those lap times, like you said, he was sort of 10 seconds ahead on another level. And I guess for you, you look at the actual best times, and he was 3 seconds a lap quicker than the next best in Moto 1 and over 2 seconds quicker than anyone else in the second race. So, what an impressive performance. And overall, how many GP wins do you think he gets this year? Does he crack double figures?
He looked really good to start. That was impressive, and I didn't really know what to expect in the mud. I didn't have, maybe I will now. I didn't have Tim Geiser kind of on my list as a mud guru. But that was just wildly impressive. And, I talked a little bit about, I don't know if it was on my podcast or if it was on this one somewhere. I talked about where I think Tim is going to be really opportunistic, and the weekends where he's not feeling his best or he just, something's a little off, he'll just take a podium and he'll maintain and just get solid points. He won't take the big risks that we've seen in 2021, 22, prior years where he felt like he had to really press up against Hurlings and Prado and, arguably a better Fevra and whoever fancied themselves, Cairoli back in the day, go back all the way back to, 17, those prior years. I think now he understands the situation is that he truly is the best guy in the class right now, and he can allow things to unfold in their own way. And there are going to be weekends where he dominates. This weekend, I didn't really think it was going to be that way, but it was. And when I assumed that those dominant weekends, yeah, it was going to be a 60-point weekend where nobody could touch him. So those make up for and a lot more the weekends where you have to just settle for a third because you don't want to risk a crash. You don't want to risk a 15th in a race, but you're plenty good enough on your bad day to be third. And that's where I believe the 2025 Tim Geiser is. And that's a phenomenal place to be. There's a lot of peace of mind that comes with that is to know on your best days, you're going to crush everyone. And on your worst days, you can just kind of bring it home for a second or a fourth, like it's not the end of the world. But he's going to win a lot of GPs this year. If he won 10 or more, I would just shoulder shrug at that because there are just going to be too many days than not where he's by far the best rider.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. And obviously, yeah, 20 GPs in, say, 7 months. It's just like you said, it's a lot of management going on there. So, and especially without Prado and Hurling. So, yeah, the ball's in his court a lot of the time. So, it'll be good to see. And obviously, your take on the Fantic boys, mate, Coldenhoff, Bonacorsi, and even Bogers did a really strong effort. A couple of them on the podium, first podium for Bonacorsi. I guess, like you said, it vindicated the faith in Fantic after obviously Yamaha. He did pretty well there after stepping up from MX2. So great effort for him. And Coldenhoff just keeps showing his class. He's getting older, but he can handle those conditions and any conditions really well. He's just a class act, isn't he?
Yeah, it was that was a master class by Fantic. I think when you look at their effort this early on, to have, I mean, what, three riders in the top 10 or two, three, four, that's amazing. They deserve a ton of credit. And yes, I would even say that Yamaha deserves credit too. Yamaha has had an instrumental role in technical development with that motorcycle. And I think they helped Fantic skip several steps to getting competitive. And there's no shame in that. It's not, when I say that, I don't mean to discredit them versus a Triumph or versus Ducati. Not in any way at all. If someone with the technical know-how and experience of Yamaha is willing to fast track your program, you don't worry about the ramifications. You just say yes and you go along for the ride. And this is where I think you reap the benefits. You are so much more capable, so much more quickly. And you could argue that it was adverse conditions and Coldenhoff's always good in the mud and okay, fine. So what? That's a part of Grand Prix motocross. Look, if you're going to discount mud racing for GPs, you're going to discount a lot. You're going to take away some of the most historic rides in the history of the sport. Think about, Fox Hills 98, Everett's performance and you can't. Like that's, you would discount Ricky Carmichael's Millville, Spring Creek 2006 ride. Nobody's going to do that. He lapped second place. That's a disgrace to discredit mud racing just because it's a different version. Like, well, that's a part of championships. So I give them a ton of credit. Everybody had the same opportunity. The gate dropped at the same time and the same location under the same conditions for everyone. And those guys performed and other guys simply didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, mate. Obviously, as you work down the list, a few more guys. Obviously, Fernandez fourth on home soil. Obviously, cool to do that, but probably not too many fans to enjoy any of the weekend with. It was just brutal. But yeah, Gifting showed great speed and skill and that mindset. He's always on the limit. He's always pretty close to crashing. He's sort of, legs off the bike, just barely hanging on. And obviously, Hogmo keeps improving and showing how impressive and just that he belongs probably on a factory team sooner rather than later. And then you look, Febvre and Renault, just not the weekends they wanted. But I guess home GP for them looks like another mutter. They'll be looking to bounce back too. So any of them sort of key takeaways from those blokes?
No, I just like the variety. I like getting in some other guys just being a part of the story, and if it takes mud to do that, so be it. Like Horgmo, I think is incredibly capable, and unfortunately MXGP is just stacked, like but if you look at Horgmo's, you know, career, MX2, he was capable, like he would hole shot a lot, run around the front. You're seeing those tendencies kind of pop up in MXGP. So, I think the real benefit or the if you're looking for a competitive advantage versus for MXGP versus pro motocross, I think the depth of MXGP really stands out. Um, the competitiveness of say 15th place in MXGP right now is shocking, and that's with losing Prado, that's with not having Hurlings. Like regardless, qualified however you want. The depth of MXGP right now is truly something to take note of, and it has been for a few years. This isn't a brand new, uh, you know, occurrence or a development. This has been going on for several years now, but it still shocks me every time I go over and look because I'm used to, and this isn't a knock against American motocross at all. I think the top end of American motocross is as strong as ever, but at times we have had, whether it's due to injuries or if you looked at prior to the SMX playoffs, there was a lack of interest for some privateers in racing motocross rounds. Now that's kind of come back full circle because these riders understand that they need to make the playoffs because of the financial rewards. So they're willing to go battle through the heat that American motocross brings all summer long. But before that, let's say 2022 really rings, kind of comes to mind. The back end of that, outside of the top nine, it dropped off really quickly where MXGP would still be in the thick of it. You'd have prior race winners battling it out in 12th and 13th, where that wouldn't be the case in America.
Yeah, 100%. You just look at that list, Renault 10th, and you got Jonas, Blandren, Watson, Seawer, Guadagnini, Brumman, Gilbert, Van der Moosdijk, Pansar, Koch, Hertz, Sterry, Toondell. Like, it's just ridiculous. That's up to
It is.
23rd. So it just speaks to what you were saying, mate. And I guess a couple of thoughts on MX2. Obviously, Everts putting in that superb masterclass, technically supreme, so precise. And I guess the Nestan dominance continues. The KTM group dominance continues in that class. De Wolf, another strong weekend. Zanke, awesome to get that podium. I guess it's hard to gauge in the mud, but yeah, it's just a bit of a leveler, like you said. And Beniston always seems to put in a pretty good shift. Obviously, great on the Saturday, winning the quality race. Not so good on the Sunday, but he puts in a good shift when you're there, doesn't he, mate?
Yeah, it was really surprising, honestly, for Beniston. I know he's capable. I've seen it. He has the talent. So it's not like it's like riding a bicycle. If you've been capable of it once, getting back there may be a difficult challenge. It's hard to get back to your best self with injuries and all those things, but he's capable. Where a lot of riders, I look at him and say, that's never going to be you, unfortunately. You're never going to be a guy that I consider a championship contender, and I don't take any pride in that. That's just reality and analysis. But Benestant can be that guy. So to see him back there was refreshing. I'm sure Saturday felt great for him. And yeah, it was just I think a glimpse of hope for he and his all of his Yamaha compatriots. But yeah, it was. I think MX2 overall it just shows that these young kids, because some of them I am still kind of learning about. Like Zanke, I learned about more at Lommel. He was a new development for me. He had such a great run going. He did crash at Lommel, but like I was shocked at how well this Italian kid was riding in the sand. Like I just didn't see that coming. So I was already a little bit clued into him. But yeah, it seems like every time I go over, there's a new standout that grabs my attention that I previously didn't know about. So that's always fun. Like you're literally seeing the future of the sport develop right in front of your eyes. That's a really cool thing that it does happen in America. Don't get me wrong. Cole Davies is a perfect example of that. As we roll into this roll through this 2025 season. But yeah, I certainly got my fair share of that this weekend in Spain as well.
Yeah, the talent's absolutely stacked. And yeah, like you said, Zanke and Ladder on that HRC, it's really cool there, back running that full factory effort in the 250. So Valon as well, the talent's pretty impressive. So we'll touch on that more as the season goes on, no doubt. And obviously on to Supercross at Birmingham this weekend. Obviously, a lot of people will be sort of refocused, re-energized, ready to hit the ground running. Hopefully, it looks like the weather's going to cooperate at this one. 22 degrees for people, depending where you are in the world, 71 for you guys. So it's looking like it's going to be nice, a nice change from the weekend for you anyway. But the season's been really good, I guess, as you look back on the first portion of it, even though Tomac, Lawrence Brothers, Prado, Kitchen, Brown, McAdoo, so many guys are injured. It's been really good racing, hasn't it, mate? It's been competitive and pretty compelling.
Yeah, it has been. I think whoever you're really cheering for, you've had something to root for, and then we've had ups and downs, and it's kind of been all over the map. Um, but I'm really curious to see after this break. We only get one break, and I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to reset and attack this second half of the championship. And I like to see kind of who does, can appreciate that and utilize it to their advantage, or who allows maybe their struggles of the first half to really take a toll down the stretch for the second half.
Yeah, it's going to be great to see. And obviously, we'll kick it off with Cooper Webb coming off his latest win. Just a really massive flex, that one. He was so impressive. Just a very commanding performance on those sort of tracks. He's always good. And obviously, the off week, he'll just be carrying that momentum in. And what's your thoughts? I guess you put him as favourite again on this kind of a track. The betting odds are definitely putting him as a favourite as they should. So it's going to be really cool to see if he can keep building that momentum and building the points gap.
Yeah, I mean, you have to like where he's at, right? Nothing is assured. That's kind of how it goes. You can't assume anything in this sport, but if you were hoping for things to go your way, let's say, you have to love the position that Cooper Webb is in, and as he would say, nothing is assured. There's no guarantee that I'm going to win anything from here. But if I had to choose positions, I would choose this one over the alternative, and how else can you really look at it? So um, I just like the way he's approached this thing. I like his awareness that anything can kind of still happen from here. And you just have to be very opportunistic, and you cannot be your own worst enemy. That's the biggest thing with this stuff is you have to eliminate mistakes. If someone goes out and beats you, fine, but unforced errors in a series like this will absolutely undo you, and he knows that all too well. So I really like his mental approach to a situation like this.
Yeah, well said. He's prime position to just keep building and keep gathering pace in the championship fight. There's still many races to go. Like you said, a lot of weather to be playing at. And it's pretty cool on the topic of star racing. It's good. Justin Cooper's doing so well and he can be a little bit of an ally for Webb and he likes what he brings to the table. He can race against him with trust and on the training side, he keeps him honest as well. So it's pretty cool. And obviously good to have Christian Craig back as well. Nice addition to the series, especially after so many guys have been injured and he's a great sort of figure. A lot of the fans love him. He's been around and he's had a rough trot with injuries too. So good to see him back out there as well.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I don't know what we're gonna see from him. It's truly a kind of I'd say an opportunity for him, but as far as analysis goes, knowing where he's going to come in and fit into this is a wild card. Like I don't know how anybody could be expected to truly know that. So I'm just going to kind of take it at face value. I think everybody's happy to have another guy. Like we've had so many injuries that having the addition side of the equation be in play versus the subtraction side, because that's what we've been dealing with, will be fun. And I mean, this is a guy that he bested Hunter Lawrence in 2022 for the championship. We know what he's capable of. He's wanted to get back on this Yamaha for a very long time. And yeah, I just another guy. I don't expect a lot. Again, if you told me he got 12th, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. Get your feet wet. He hasn't raced in a long time. But he's a guy that's fun to watch ride. His style is undeniable. So by all means, welcome addition.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just crazy. You look back at some of the fortunes of those guys, those 250 title winners, and you got Craig, Nichols, Justin Cooper. It varies quite a lot when you're sort of in that 450 class in its current guise, isn't it, mate? So it just sort of shows how brutal that step up to the 450s is, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's for most of these guys, it's such a difficult ask to go from the 250 class where you're racing against kids and you're the most talented guy on the best equipment and you should be winning or at least on the podium every time, just given those variables I mentioned, to you jump to the 450 class and everybody's on the same equipment. Everybody has the same resume. Everybody's talented and probably has a better resume than you do. Now let's see how good you are. And that's what the situation is. Like when you're looking at what are these guys facing, that's it. In a nutshell is the 450, Monster Energy Supercross class for Supercross out, let's say the top 15, it's an all-star class, and you're talking about guys like Colt Nichols, who, he hasn't been lighting the world on fire. He's been getting anywhere from, 10th to 17th on a given weekend. Just a former champion in the class. Like, this guy's wildly talented, and this is the fight he's in. Look at Shane McElrath. He took Chase Sexton to the wire in 2020 for the 250 title. He's won, I don't know how many 250 races, and he has to move to the 450 class. And you look at now what that picture looks like. It's tough. It's really hard. Like, ask Jason Anderson how it went in Indianapolis. Like, he got shuffled back. He wasn't feeling that great, obviously, in the main event. He got shuffled back to like eighth or ninth or whatever. Like, it just it's a really, really difficult class. I think pro motocross, these guys don't ride motocross as much, but if you really want to talk about where do they excel, where do they really define their talent, it's in Supercross. Make no mistake about that. I think, Motocross of Nations will always have a special place in my heart, but our guys are not motocross focused most of the year. They are thinking about Supercross most of the time. And that's where I think their best skill set shines. And they're gonna show up at Ironman and ride as proudly as possible. And if they lose, they're gonna take it as hard as ever. I'm just saying, from a racer's mentality who lived this, the majority and their primary focus for most of the year is on Supercross. And if you really want to be impressed by their skill set, that's where we should probably be looking. And that's where I'm trying to bring this back towards the depth part of it. The depth really shows up in a healthy Supercross field.
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal, like you said. And I guess, who do you think's primed to make the step up and, really, stamp their mark? I guess guys that'll be moving up in the next few years. You look at Vial, Kitchen, Smith, Deegan, Faulkner, Hampshire, Hammaker, McAdoo. Who do you think's well placed to do that? There's a lot of guys in that you can't easily sort of fit them in straight into the top 10, can you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough slog for a lot of them. You're really looking for the difference maker, in my opinion, because the rest of these guys, I think, are going to jump in and be pretty good, but they'll be battling it out with a lot of guys, the Plessingers and Jason Andersons. And there's a lot of top 10 guys that are no joke. And that's who they have to contend with. And you really want to think about who can beat them, because I think all those guys, Vials, they'll all be fine. They'll be in that fight. They'll be somewhere inside the top 12 on a given weekend, battling it out with riders with exactly the same resume they have when they moved up. I always look for, okay, who is different? As kids say, who's built different amongst these guys? And when I look at him, I really think Deegan has the potential. That's not breaking news, but I would say the second guy to me is, assume he gets healthy, assume he gets right. I think Levi Kitchen has the skill set, and I think he has the bike skill to do well in a 450. And maybe he will, maybe he won't. I think he has some things he needs to work on. I think he needs to get a little bit tougher. And I don't mean like that's why he got hurt. I'm just saying, overcoming adversity, no matter what the situation brings, you have to be your best self. And I think Levi gets a little thrown off his game if things aren't perfect. Well, to be at the top level 450, you have to grow out of that. And I think you will, but you just have to, whatever's thrown at you, good day, bad day. Like, look at Cooper Webb, for example. He could suck all day. If you count him out for the main event, you do so at your own peril. Well, that's resilience, and that's maturity, and being able to have a really short-term memory about how your day is going. And so those are all the things that I think these guys kind of have to weave through. But I don't know. When I look at this class, I don't see many guys that are like, they're going to come in and just take over the reins. I think, Deegan and Kitchen are the ones that I look at and say that they have a unique skill set that could really translate to a 450.
Yeah, it's going to be so fascinating to see. And obviously, the sport's in a really good place, even though guys like, Roxon, Barsha, Jason Anderson, Tomac, Mookie, Craig are probably on their last couple of seasons or last season. It'll be really cool. The talent pathway is massive. And you look ahead, it's an exciting prospect for someone like Cole Davies and even Shimoda, just the technically precise, intelligent, measured riders to step up too, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's The trouble is I think that there are a lot of guys like that. That's the problem. It's I would heap a lot of riders kind of into the same barrel. Like they have a lot of the same similarities. And I felt the same about AP. When AP moved up, there was a lot of talk in this building about, hey, we should try to sign Plessinger's personality and all this. And I was like, yeah, I don't disagree. And I remember talking with one of my closest friends that used to work here, and he was like, man, I think he's gonna go win on a 450. And I'm like, not right now, not early. And we disagreed. Like this guy, I trust this guy's opinion. Like he's a smart guy. We just disagreed on that. And I said, I don't think yet. I'm not saying ever, but right now, he's winning on a 250. That's great, but he's not beating anybody that it could take it to the next level either. So he's going to be fine, but I think he's going to be kind of another top 10 guy. And I will say that I got that one right. But one I got wrong was Hunter Lawrence. I felt the same way with Hunter. I was like, he's going to be fine, but I didn't see anything flashy in Supercross or anything that really told me he was going to be able to take the next step and go win races. And he 100% disproved that last year. So I just got that wrong, and I had to reanalyze and change my perspective on Hunter. So I kind of feel that way with most of the 250 class right now is great riders, capable, but are they going to go in and disrupt the upper echelon of the 450 class? I would say there aren't a lot of those guys right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so difficult to do what, Jet Lawrence did, Sexton's done, just come in and win pretty quickly. So I guess
Yep.
on the topic of Sexton, mate, you mentioned it again. It's always good to get your thoughts on him with your industry seeding podcast, just that susceptibility to negative thoughts. And hopefully in the week off, he wasn't drowning in those and he's sort of, risen above it and he's ready to come out and regrouped and see how he goes in Birmingham, mate. Just hopefully he can avoid those mistakes, have a clean second portion of the season, and hopefully he can find some solutions and take steps to getting better. That's just the main thing. We want to see him out there winning, battling, and easier said than done, but hopefully Sexton comes back and it's all positive.
Yeah, it can go one of two ways. Just like you said, you can process it and say, I did about everything I could do wrong here. Like I started off great, but the last few rounds, I have absolutely been my own worst enemy. There's that way of going about it, and you can say, of all those things I did wrong, I'm only 15 points down. Like that's crazy. Like how has Coop let me stay this close? I've given away so many points. Like it's like 30 points and swing points that I've given up, and I'm still that close. All right, like you shouldn't have let me stay this close, man. Or it can go the other way, and he could wallow in self-pity that he's made so many mistakes and he's thrown away the lead and thrown away wins, and he can read all the headlines and listen to people like myself who have, been saying like, man, you cannot make mistakes like that. So that's completely up to him which way he goes from here. There's a lot of sports psychology, I think, at play here, and I think he really has to manage his thoughts. And if you've ever listened to sports therapy or anything like that, they really talk a lot about managing what you allow yourself to hear, what you allow yourself to say, what you allow yourself to think, because those thoughts become reality. Those thoughts manifest into reality. And subconsciously, you can start to believe all those things, right or wrong. You become what you surround yourself with. And I think there's a lot of truth in that. If you surround yourself in negativity all the time, there are very few people that can overcome that and remain positive. So I think it's important for Chase to look at the upsides of things, remember the silver linings, remember that, because I believe this. And if I had a vested interest or something, I would tell him like, hey, if you're riding well, the only person at the races that can beat you is you. That's a really powerful thing, and that's a very rare thing. Most riders will never experience that feeling, is knowing like I'm the only person here that can beat me. Now, he's been doing a great job of that. I will say that. He's been incredibly proficient at beating himself. So I guess kudos. I don't know. But it's all perspective. much of life is often how you view it. Like I always talk about there have been some incidents or some scenarios in motocross lately. You can probably understand where I'm going, where perspectives on one event or similar events vary widely, and how people viewed the same thing differed tremendously. I think that's a important thing. Like if you're Chase, managing how you view this situation, and I would say how you view this opportunity. If you could say it just, and I kind of already said it, but like as bad as it's gone and as much turmoil and how much you tormented yourself and you have a 15-point deficit, like it feels like you're 100 points down, like mentally. You're sitting there holding your head in your hands. You, I can't imagine what he's saying to himself and how bad he felt and just staring at the ceiling every night. And you're only 15 points down. Like it's not that bad. So I don't know. I'm curious. I'm painting both sides of the picture here. Um, I'm incredibly curious to see which way or which path he takes down the second half of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what lens he views his situation through, and obviously it'll bear out this weekend for sure, mate. And I guess one more guy we'll touch on as we sort of wrap up. Roxon, obviously seventh last round, sort of that slight balloon pop after obviously winning at Daytona, but he's probably just in the hunt, 26 back. It was looking good last round, qualified P1, looking like another night for a podium at least, but just didn't work out. Got stuck back there, couldn't make the passes. But I guess with some of these open stadiums, like you said, the mud could be a leveler and he could claw some points back. So how do you see Kenny's second half of the season shaping up?
He's man, he's certainly capable, but I'll give Jason Weigandt a lot of credit because he's been kind of preaching this is it's not a big deal to be 15 points down. Like I think he cut it to 16 at one, going into Indy. But the problem is that your margin for error is now virtually zero. That is the true problem when it comes down to it. And you can't have any bad races. You have to be perfect. And if you have a bad race, it's almost like it's over. And I don't want to say it's over for Kenny. That's not fair. But when you go from 16 to 26, now the picture has changed tremendously. And it wasn't like it was a horrendous race. He got seventh. It's not like he DNF'd like he did at Tampa, but that is the unfortunate situation you put yourself in with the deficit going in. Because if they were tied, and take Tampa out of the equation, no big deal. Like you'd be 10 points down. He actually would have had the points lead going into Indy. So he'd be a couple points out of the lead. No big deal. It's fine. Whatever. Like things happen. But man, you look at it now, 26 points, and that's to first. You still got to deal with Sexton to get there. It's just a tough situation that Kenny finds himself in now.
Yeah, it's not easy, is it? Especially when you know Webb and Sexton should be up there every weekend. And as we wrap up, mate, any final thoughts, any sort of thoughts from the weekend regarding fly racing and the Dakali crew? And obviously looking ahead to this weekend, should be another one. You'll be looking forward to it, even though you're probably not looking forward to getting on another flight, mate. But yeah, just any closing thoughts?
No, I just I feel incredibly lucky to be in the spot I'm in. I think this weekend we're going to get good weather, so we're going to get good weather. We're going to get a triple crown, and we're going to get the first weekend out of a break. So I think we're going to learn a lot about what we can expect from here, if that makes sense. I think we're going to get a lot of answers to our questions because I think if Webb goes out and wins again, extends the points lead again, it's going to be really hard, I think, to grapple that away from him. So that's kind of where my head is at is these guys better get a grip on the Cooper Webb train if they want any chance at stopping him. Because weekends like this can really cement what we've seen. If that makes sense. Like you come in with preconceived notions, it's like, okay, we think we know what's going on. Cooper's taking control. Sexton seems like he's on the back foot. He's really lost the confidence in himself. Kenny feels like he's a little out of it now. He's just going to go for the race wins, and we can all cheer for that. That's kind of how we feel. If we get confirmation of that this weekend, man, it's really hard, I think, to unwind that because I think the psychological effects everybody's wondering, okay, is this real or is are we going to see a change? If you further that, you cement that feeling again after they've had time to process it for 2 full weeks, you get more of it. Um, nothing's assured, but I just think that's a really hard thing to kind of unwind. And I think you'll see the series maintain that same direction. If that's what we get. If we get confirmation of what we've seen, I think you're going to see much more of it. But it can go the other way. If you see a completely different dynamic unfold, there's a real opportunity that the momentum changes direction. Like that can be a signal of trend change because they've had time to process these things. Like I can't explain enough how much of a whirlwind it is when you have back-to-back races for months on end. You just don't have time to really think or change things. There's no time to change your program. You're basically just trying to recover week to week and get back to the races. This is the first time they've really had a time to decompress and think about what's gone on and really try to implement any change. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I just think there's something there in the signaling side that we have to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing to see it all play out, that's for sure, mate. And yeah, thanks again for joining us on this one. It's been another ripper chat. And obviously, massive thanks to Fly Racing as well. Obviously, go check out flyracing.com, your local dealer. Follow Fly Racing on social media and cheer for all their athletes, both in MXGP and the SMX World Championship. So thanks again, JT. All the best for the weekend, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, man. Thanks again.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.